I never told my son about my $40,000 monthly salary, even though he always saw me living a simple life. One day, he invited me to dinner with his husband's parents, who were visiting from abroad. I decided to see how they would treat a poor person by pretending to be a broke and naive mother. But the moment I stepped through the door of that restaurant, everything changed. What happened that night devastated my son-in-law and his family in a way they never imagined. And trust me, they deserved it. Let me explain how I got there. Let me tell you who I really am. Because my son Daniel, at 35 years old, never knew the truth about his mother. To him, I was always just the woman who left early for the office, who came back tired in the evenings, who cooked with whatever was in the fridge, just another employee, maybe a secretary, someone ordinary, nothing special. And I never corrected him. I never told him that I earned $40,000 every month, that I had been a senior executive at a multinational corporation for almost 20 years, signing million-dollar contracts and making decisions that affected thousands of people. Why tell him? Money was never something I needed to hang on the wall like a trophy. I grew up in an era where dignity was carried within, where silence was worth more than hollow words. So, I guarded my truth. I lived in the same modest apartment for years. I used the same leather handbag until it was worn out. I bought clothes at discount chains, cooked at home, saved everything, invested everything, and became rich in silence. Because true power doesn't shout. True power observes. And I was observing closely when Daniel called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, like when he was a kid and had done something wrong. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. Adrian's parents are visiting from overseas. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. We're having dinner on Saturday, at a restaurant. Please come." Something in his tone made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the voice of a son inviting his mother. It was the voice of someone asking not to be embarrassed, to fit in, to make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. There was a silence. Then Daniel stammered, "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word simple. As if my entire life could be contained in that miserable adjective. As if I were a problem he needed to apologize for. I took a deep breath. "Okay, Daniel, I'll be there." I hung up and looked around my living room, old but comfortable furniture. Walls without expensive artwork, a small TV, nothing that would impress anyone. And at that moment, I decided. If my son thought I was a poor woman, if his husband's parents were coming ready to judge, then I would give them exactly what they expected to see. I would pretend to be broke, naive, and desperate. A mother barely surviving. I wanted to feel firsthand how they treated someone who had nothing. I wanted to see their true faces because I suspected something. I suspected Adrian and his family were the type of people who measured others by their bank accounts. And my instinct never fails. Saturday arrived. I dressed in the worst outfit. I owned a light gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress, the kind they sell at a thrift store. Old, worn-out shoes, no jewelry, not even a watch. I grabbed a faded canvas tote bag, pulled my hair back into a messy ponytail, and looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman broken by life. Forgettable. Perfect. I got into a taxi and gave the address a high-end restaurant in the most exclusive part of the city, the kind where the menu doesn't list prices, where each table setting costs more than the average person's monthly salary. As we drove, I felt something strange. A mix of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew something big was coming. Sadness because a part of me still hoped I was wrong. I hoped they would treat me well, that they would be kind, that they would look past the old clothes. But the other part, the one that had worked 40 years among corporate sharks, that part knew exactly what was waiting for me. The taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Warm lights, a doorman in white gloves, elegant people entering. I paid, stepped out, took a deep breath, crossed the threshold, and there they were. Daniel was standing next to a long table near the windows. He wore a dark suit, a white shirt, and shiny shoes. He looked anxious, fidgeting with his watch. Beside him was Adrian, my son-in-law. He wore an elegant navy blazer with fitted trousers and designer shoes. His hair was perfectly styled, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never known struggle. And then I saw them, Adrian's parents, already seated at the table, waiting like royalty on their thrones. The mother, Margot, wore a fitted emerald green dress, full of sequins, jewels on her neck, wrists, and fingers. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant bun. She had that cold, calculated type of beauty that intimidates. Beside her was Philip, her husband, an immaculate gray suit, a giant watch on his wrist, a serious expression. Both looked like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. I walked toward them slowly with short steps, as if I were afraid. Daniel saw me first, and his face changed. His eyes widened. He looked me up and down. I noticed him swallow hard. "Mom, you came." His voice sounded uncomfortable, almost mortified. "Of course, son, here I am." I smiled timidly, the smile of a woman unaccustomed to such places. Adrian greeted me with a quick nod, cold, mechanical. "Mrs. Bennett, hello." Daniel introduced me to Adrian's parents in a strange, almost apologetic tone. "Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, this is my mother." Margot looked up, studied me, and in that instant, I saw everything. The judgment, the disdain, the disappointment. Her eyes scanned my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, my canvas tote. She didn't say anything at first, just extended a hand, cold, quick, and weak. "A pleasure." Her tone was glacial. Philip did the same. A weak handshake, a dismissive smile. Charmed. His eyes had already written me off as irrelevant. I sat down in the chair at the end of the table, the one furthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped me pull out my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. Adrian turned his body slightly away from me. Daniel was staring at the table. The waiter arrived with elegant, heavy menus written in French. I opened mine and pretended not to understand anything. Margot watched me with barely concealed amusement. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know what these words mean." My voice came out small, timid, embarrassed. She sighed dramatically and ordered for me without asking what I might like. "Something simple?" she said to the waiter. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to overdo it." The phrase hung in the air like a slap. Philip nodded in agreement. Adrian smirked slightly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. And I just watched, filing away every detail, every microaggression, every dismissive glance. Margot started talking about general things, the journey from abroad, how exhausting the flight was, how different everything was here. Then she began to talk about money. She mentioned the hotel where they were staying, $1,000 a night, but anything less would be unacceptable. She mentioned the luxury car they had rented, a Bentley, obviously. We have standards. She mentioned the stores they had visited. We bought a few things. Nothing major, just a few thousand. You know how it is when you travel. She spoke looking directly at me, expecting a reaction, expecting me to be impressed, to be envious. I just nodded, meekly. "How nice," I said quietly. "That's lovely," she continued, warming to her subject. "You know, Mrs. Bennett, we've always been very careful with money. We worked hard. We invested wisely. Now we have properties in 3 countries. Philip has major business interests, and I oversee our investments and manage our real estate portfolio." She smiled, a smile of pure superiority. "And you, what exactly do you do?" Her tone was sweet but venomous. I lowered my gaze, playing my part perfectly. "I work in an office," I replied softly. "I do a little bit of everything. Paperwork, filing, answering phones, simple things." Margot exchanged a look with Philip, a look loaded with meaning, with silent judgment. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's fine. It's honest work. She paused. All jobs are dignified, right? Of course, I replied meekly. The food arrived. Enormous plates with tiny portions, all decorated like art. Margot cut her steak with precision. This costs $80, she said, looking at me. But it's worth it. Quality is worth paying for. One can't just eat anything, right? I nodded. Of course you're right. Daniel tried to change the subject, talking about work and some projects. Margot interrupted him smoothly. Daniel, dear, does your mother live alone? Daniel nodded reluctantly. Yes, she has a small apartment. Margot looked at me with feigned pity. It must be difficult, isn't it? Living alone at your age without much support? And does your salary cover everything? I felt the trap closing. I barely manage, I replied. But I get by. I save where I can. I don't need much. Margot sighed dramatically. Oh, Mrs. Bennet, you are so brave. Truly, I admire women who struggle alone. Although, of course, one always wishes to give our children more, to give them a better life, but, well, everyone gives what they can. There was the subtle but deadly blow. She was telling me I hadn't been enough for my son, that I hadn't given him what he deserved, that I was a poor, insufficient mother. Adrian was nodding along. Daniel was clenching his fists under the table, and I just smiled softly. Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can, Margot continued, relentless. We always made sure Adrian had the best. He went to the finest schools, traveled the world, learned 4 languages. Now he has an excellent career, earns very well. And when he and Daniel got married, well, we helped them quite a bit. We gave them money for the down payment on their house. We paid for their honeymoon in the Maldives. Because that's just who we are. We believe in supporting our children. She looked at me intently, her eyes sharp as knives. And you? Were you able to help Daniel with anything when they got married? The question floated like a blade. Not much, I replied, looking down. I gave them what I could, a small gift. Margot smiled, a cruel smile. How sweet. Every detail counts, right? The amount doesn't matter. The intention is what's important. But her tone said the opposite. Her tone said the amount mattered very much. And right then, I felt the rage begin to stir within me. Not hot, explosive rage, this was cold, controlled rage. Like a river under ice. Dangerous, powerful, patient. I breathed slowly, kept a timid smile on my face, and let Margot keep talking because that's what people like her do. They talk. They inflate themselves. They show off. And the more they talk, the more they reveal the emptiness inside. Margot took a sip of her expensive red wine, swirling it in her hand with exaggerated expertise. This wine is from an exclusive region in Bordeaux, she announced. It costs $200 a bottle, but when you know quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine, Mrs. Bennet? Only on special occasions, I replied. And usually the cheapest one. I don't understand much about these things. Margot smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, with travel, with education. Philip and I have visited vineyards all over the world. We are quite knowledgeable. Adrian is learning too. He has good taste. He inherited it from us. She looked at Adrian with pride. Adrian offered a smug smile. Thanks, Mom. Margot turned to me. And you, Mrs. Bennet? Do you have any hobbies? Anything you enjoy doing in your free time? I shrugged. I watch television, cook, walk in the park, simple things. Margot and Philip exchanged another look loaded with silent judgment. How lovely, Margot said. Simple things have their charm. Although, of course, one always aspires to more, right? To see the world, to experience new things, to grow culturally. But, well, I understand not everyone has those opportunities. I nodded. You're right. Note everyone has those opportunities. The waiter arrived with dessert, tiny portions that looked like edible art. Margot ordered the most expensive one, $30 for a piece of cake the size of a cookie. "This is delicious," she said after the first bite. "It has edible gold on top. See those little golden flakes? It's a detail only the best restaurants offer." I ate my dessert simpler. "Keep her in silence," Margot continued. "You know, Mrs. Bennet, I think it's important that we talk about something as a family now that we are all here." She paused. Her expression became serious, falsely maternal. "Daniel is our son-in-law, and we love him very much. Adrian loves him, and we respect that. But as parents, we always want the best for our son." Daniel tensed up. "Margot, I don't think this is the time." Margot raised her hand. "Let me finish. This is important." She looked at me. "Mrs. Bennet, I understand you did the best you could with Daniel. I know raising him alone wasn't easy, and I respect you for that. But now Daniel is at another stage in his life. He is married, he has responsibilities, and well, Adrian and he deserve to have stability." "Stability?" I asked softly. "Yes," Margot replied. "Financial, emotional stability. We have helped a lot, and we will continue to help. But we also believe it's important that Daniel doesn't have unnecessary burdens." Her tone was clear. She was calling me a burden. Me, his mother. Adrian was looking at his plate. Daniel had his jaw clenched. "Burdens?" I repeated quietly. Margot sighed. "I don't want to sound harsh, Mrs. Bennet, but at your age, living alone with a limited salary, it's natural for Daniel to worry about you, to feel he must take care of you, and that's fine. He is a good son. But we don't want that worry to affect his marriage. Do you understand?" "Perfectly," I replied. Margot smiled. "I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to talk to you. Philip and I have thought about something." She paused dramatically. "We could help you financially, give you a small monthly allowance, something that allows you to live more comfortably without Daniel having to worry so much. Obviously, it would be modest. We can't work miracles, but it would be a support." I remained silent, watching her, waiting. She continued. "And in exchange, we would only ask you to respect Daniel and Adrian's space, not to seek them out so much, not to pressure them, to give them the freedom to build their life together without interference." How does that sound? There it was. The bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me off. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my son's life. Daniel exploded. "Margot, that's enough! Mom, you don't have to—" Margot interrupted him. "Daniel, calm down. We're talking like adults. Your mother understands, right?" I picked up my napkin, calmly wiped my lips, took a sip of water, and let the silence grow. Everyone was looking at me. Margot with expectation, Philip with arrogance, Adrian with shame, Daniel with desperation. And then I spoke. My voice came out completely different. It was no longer timid. It was no longer small. It was firm, clear, and cold. "That's an interesting offer, Margot. Truly very generous of you." Margot smiled victoriously. "I'm glad you see it that way." I nodded. "But I have a few questions just to understand clearly." Margot blinked. "Of course. Ask whatever you like." I leaned forward slightly. "How much exactly would you consider a modest monthly allowance?" Margot hesitated. "Well, we were thinking about $500, maybe $700 depending." I nodded. "I see. $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life." Margot frowned. "I wouldn't put it like that, but—" "That is exactly how you put it," I responded. She adjusted in her chair. "Mrs. Bennet, I don't want you to misunderstand. We just want to help." "Of course," I said. "Help. How did you help with the house down payment? How much was that?" Margot nodded proudly. $40,000. "Ah, $40,000. How generous. And the honeymoon?" $15,000, Margot said. It was a 3-week trip. Incredible, I replied. So, you've invested approximately $55,000 in Daniel and Adrian. Margot smiled. When you love your children, you don't hold back. I nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. When you love your children, you don't hold back. But tell me something, Margot. All that investment, all that money, did it buy you anything real? Margot blinked, confused. What do you mean? Did it buy you respect? I continued. Did it buy you genuine love? Or did it just buy obedience? The atmosphere changed. Margot stopped smiling. Excuse me? My tone became sharper. You've spent this entire evening talking about money, about how much things cost, about how much you've spent, about how much you have, but you haven't asked me even once how I am. If I'm happy, if I'm healthy, if I need company. You have only calculated my worth, and apparently I'm worth $700 a month. Margot paled. I didn't. Yes, I interrupted. Yes, you did. Since I arrived, you've been measuring my value with your wallet. And do you know what I discovered? The people who talk most about money are usually the ones who understand least about true value. Philip intervened. I think you are misinterpreting my wife's intentions. I looked at him directly. And what were her intentions? To treat me with compassion? Or to humiliate me throughout dinner and then offer me money to disappear? Philip opened his mouth but said nothing. Daniel was pale. Mom, please. I looked at him. No, Daniel. I'm done being quiet. I placed the napkin on the table. I sat back in my chair. There was no more timidity in my posture. No more shrinking. I looked Margot directly in the eyes. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away, uncomfortable. Something had changed, and everyone felt it. Margot, you said you admire women who struggle alone, who are brave. Margot nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Then let me ask you something. Have you ever struggled alone? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you? Have you ever built something with your own 2 hands, starting from nothing? Margot stammered. I have my own achievements. Like what? I asked. Tell me. Margot adjusted her hair nervously. I manage our investments. I oversee properties. I make important decisions. I nodded. Businesses your husband built. Properties you bought together. Investments made with wealth that already existed? Or am I wrong? Philip intervened angrily. That's not fair. My wife works just as hard as I do. Of course, I replied calmly. I don't doubt she works. But there is a difference between managing money that already exists and creating it from scratch. Between overseeing an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick. Margot pressed her lips together. I don't know where you're going with this. Let me explain, I replied. 40 years ago, I was 23 years old. I was a secretary in a small company. I earned minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find. And I was alone, completely alone. Daniel stared at me. I had never told him this in such detail. I continued. One day, I got pregnant. The father disappeared. My family turned their backs on me. I had to decide whether to keep going or give up. I chose to keep going. I worked until the last day of my pregnancy. I went back to work 2 weeks after Daniel was born. A neighbor took care of him during the day. I worked 12 hours a day. I paused and drank some water. No one spoke. I didn't stay a secretary. I studied at night. I took courses. I learned English at the public library. I learned accounting, finance, administration. I became an expert in things no one taught me. All on my own. All while raising a child alone. All while paying rent, food, medicine, and clothes. Margot was staring at me, the color draining from her face. I worked my way up, I continued, from secretary to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, from manager to director, from director to senior executive. It took me 20 years, 20 years of 14-hour days. 20 years of sacrifices. 20 years of choosing between my comfort and Daniel's future. I looked at Daniel. His eyes were wet. And do you know what I earn now, Margot? I earn $40,000 a month. $40,000 every month. For the past 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Margot's mouth fell open. Philip's eyes widened. Adrian looked like he'd been slapped. Daniel's tears spilled over. So your offer of $700 a month? I smiled coldly. I spend more than that on groceries in a week. The small gift I gave Daniel and Adrian at their wedding? It was $50,000 in a trust fund that matures in 5 years. I didn't announce it because I don't believe in showing off. I believe in dignity. In silence. In letting my actions speak. I stood up slowly, gathering my worn canvas bag. You wanted to know if I have hobbies, Margot? I sit on the board of 3 charities. I mentor young women in corporate leadership. I've funded scholarships for single mothers. But I don't talk about it because I don't need to prove my worth to anyone. I looked at Daniel. Son, I'm sorry I let you think I was struggling. I wanted you to build your own life, to value your own achievements, to not depend on me, but I never imagined it would make you ashamed of me. Daniel stood up, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I touched his cheek gently. We'll talk later. Then I turned to Margot and Philip. As for your offer, keep your $700. Keep your pity, keep your judgment, and learn this. True wealth isn't in your bank account. It's in your character. And tonight, you showed me exactly how poor you really are. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, leaving behind a table of stunned, humiliated people who had just learned the most expensive lesson of their lives: never judge a book by its cover, and never underestimate the quiet strength of a woman who built her empire in silence. The doorman opened the door for me, and this time, his eyes held respect. He'd heard everything. Have a good evening, ma'am, he said, with genuine warmth. Thank you, I replied. I will. And I did.